Okay, we're recording.
Okay, so for my work placement, I went to Binary Source Studios for the majority of it anyway, and I did some work on a film as well, which we'll talk about in a while. Binary Source Studios is a large studio complex basically aimed at doing post-production for film and television. You see we have the main 5.1 mixing room, which is set up with 4 monitors connected to Nuendo, one with Pro Tools and one that runs another separate computer even that runs like mastering plugins. And we now have a big plasma screen with a real-time spectrum analyzer and phase coherence and things like that. We've got a large live room, including like some old Wurlitzers, Rhodes, grand pianos, amps, drum kits, basically everything a band would need. Fully treated vocal brew, and 4 project studios all around the main room, and we can all be tie-lined in to record from the main room as well. And all the computers are networked, so you can record in any of the smaller studios and then bring it back into the main room for mixing, or vice versa. On the floor underneath the main room, there's a large open space which they're trying to utilise at the moment. I think they've actually had it put in now with big green screen, and it's also got 5.1 set up in there as well. So they're trying to branch out into people being able to record their actual footage there if they need to do some green screen work or things like that. And then that's tie-lined into the studio as well. So you could record maybe a music video or for a band or something similar to that. That's kind of some of the plans we've got for the future. Another one is Mark wants to do 24-hour recording for bands, so kind of fitting around band schedules so we don't have to go take time off work, or if you want to do a full 24-hour session or anything like that, then that's something he wants to do in the future. My learning aims for when I was at Binary Cell was basically to gain a better understanding of how a professional studio runs, and everything involved in the running, like day-to-day business, dealing with clients. It's different when you're recording friends or student bands, like people you know, and I guess there's a different way of communicating with people when it's paying customers and it's a business's reputation kind of thing. Dealing with any problems that come up during the course of any sessions, so help my problem-solving skills, and to learn new recording techniques and practices. I think with these, I did manage to do all of those. We did have some problems crop up along the way with dodgy cables. One of the preamps wasn't working when we were recording. A different one wasn't supplying phantom power to a microphone, so just basic tracking the problem down and then solving it. I did learn different techniques of like stereo miking on drum kits and pianos and different ways of doing things, sort of different ways of thinking. Mark even at one point had a guitarist playing in the live room and set up microphones in different rooms outside just to see what that would sound like. Just learning different little things that I hadn't never done before. It's just a few pictures which you can't really see back in. That's the main room, as you can see itself, for the surround sound, with the subs down there at the back. And like I said, there's now a big screen there with everything, so you can check it's all in phase and everything. There's like 4 monitors in the middle with Nuendo on, which is the main recording thing. We've got Pro Tools there, and then down the end, in fact, that on that screen there, which you can't really see, is what's now on the big plasma screen.
Okay, yeah.
The first time I was there, I was editing audio for an NHS documentary film, which I didn't actually have the video there, I just had all the audio files. And the main problem with that, the main difficulty was it wasn't in English, so I was editing a language I didn't understand. So it was kind of, like Mark went through it with me, and you can kind of tell the sort of length things are supposed to be, but the main difficulty was you had like the length of the shot that the commentary was going over, but some of them were longer because, I mean, different syllables of words in different languages are longer. And also, I think it was Swahili I was doing, or something like that, and some of the words had little clicks and things, like the sort of thing in English you would probably remove, but you had to kind of try and decide whether it was part of a word or not, and that was interesting. It was different. Second, and most of my sessions were involved in doing an album by an artist from near Birmingham, I think she's from. And the main one we did was the drum recording. And for that, I was responsible for setting up all the microphones and the bass DI, positioning all the microphones, getting all the levels from the drum kit, and most of the recording during the day. And that was a picture of the drum setup we had, of the microphones we used. A couple of pictures. I mean, there was no real problems with that session. Although that was the session where we had to find out which preamp wasn't providing the phantom power and things like that. But another one I did was a full band recording from a band that won a competition to get a day in the studio, for which they wanted to all play live together. I mean, so obviously to get the best recording, we couldn't have them all in the same room at the same time. So we had to set them up in different rooms. I mean, again, I set up all the drum mics. We set up all the microphones and headphone mixers in different rooms for the rest of the band. So we had the drummer in the main room, we had the guitarist in a room behind him, and they've all got windows so we could all see each other. And then in the vocal booth we had the other guitarist who was the singer, and the bass player was in the room with the drummer, but we had the bass amp out in the corridor with obviously the microphones and a DI as well. So yeah, we had the singer guitar in the vocal booth. So his guitar was just lying in, it wasn't an amp. We later went and replaced his guitar. The second guitarist in the different studio behind, and the bass amp in the corridor, which actually provided quite a nice sound. The main issue with that one was all the tie lines. Because basically in all the little studios you've got like a stage box, which then runs out into the main room. So then you've got to connect up which one you plug something into from there to the main one that goes into the main mixing room. And the same with the headphone mixers coming back. So it was quite, obviously you had to keep track of where everything was going. And when we had about 26 channels of audio coming in or something, at times it got a bit hard. Yeah, so I had to keep track of where all the cables were. And we did have a problem with that one as well, and that to find a dodgy cable within all that.
Oh, no. Yeah.
So that's quite a lot of problem solving. Another one was keeping track of which headphone mix was going to who, because different musicians required different mixes of things. So making sure everybody could hear everybody else, again, is the headphone mixes, I guess. And making sure everybody could hear us. That's the end of my binary cell part, but I did do work on a film with Alan for a few days, which involved mainly boom operating. I did record some of the audio for it, like in a car park. We had a scene in a car park where the camera was quite far back, and there was a group of youths, like a gang, at the far end, and we wanted to be able to hear what they were saying, so we taped two like radio mics onto the roof above them, and I monitored that and recorded that while we were doing it. But the rest of the time I was just boom operating. The main issues with that, I suppose, are trying to avoid shadows in the shots, and trying to get in as close as possible to record everything clearly whilst not getting in the actor's way. And I think that's it. Is there any questions?
Okay. What was your hours at Binary Cell?
Generally, I'd go in either about 9 or 10 in the morning and probably leave about midnight, 1 o'clock. So I was doing about 12, 13 hours a day. I did, I think, 5 full days like that. So I probably did close to 60 hours there. And
Right,
then
okay.
did a couple of 10-hour days on the film as well.
And how long, sorry, on the film? And that's it.
I did 3 days on the film, probably between 8 and 10 hours each. So I guess around 20 hours doing that.
Right, okay. Did you get any? What would have been good, perhaps in the presentation, would be just a sort of a few samples of the recordings or anything. Do you have access to anything
I
like
asked,
that?
I'm not allowed to use that
Right, okay.
because it's going to be commercially released. So
Yeah, yeah. Even down to sort of if it was
I suppose I could have gone and
the
found
the drummer sort of like, here's the drummer playing, and this is where it was sort of these mics, or here's a little, like imagine a drummer's just playing a beat, and it's like here's this mic, then here's this mic, then here's this mic, then here's them all together, that type of thing. So it's not.
I wouldn't have been allowed to take the audio files. They were only being recorded.
Yeah,
at Binary
yeah.
Cell, it wasn't being mixed there.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And I don't think Mark would have let me take the audio file. Well, it's not up to him. Well, it is, and it's up to the artist as well.
Yeah, that's all right. I mean, it's just sort of ask.
I did ask Mark, but he said it was up to the artist, and then I haven't seen her since. To be honest.
Did you get any take on what say like the band who won the day in studio? Obviously, from their perspective, and it's only speculation on my part, but they're hanging around quite a lot because you've got a hell of a lot to set up.
We actually got them to bring the drums in the day before, and we set up all the microphones the night before, so they came into the studio and we had most things set up.
Right, okay.
We just had to wait for them to bring their amps in and set up the guitar amps, the lining and the DIs and stuff like that, but most of it, when we recorded the drums for the Daniela thing as well, we did it the day before.
Okay. Does the studio get any feedback at the end of sessions of clients?
I would imagine so. I've never dealt with that part personally. I've been there when people have been thanking Mark for, like with Daniela, because she came up on like 4 different occasions to do the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And she was always thanking him and getting. I'm guessing she did get feedback later on when I wasn't there. Like when at the end of the day in the studio, everyone was tired and.
Yeah, yeah. Do you get any? What was I going to say? The thing to do with. Did you sort of pick up any sort of things about like etiquette or did you observe any client engineer conversations? I don't mean people talking with you, but did you observe anything where people were having debates, conversations, sort of arguments, or anything with Mark, or some way where you can sort of, as an observer, you go, well, this is interesting. He's kind of like putting them straight here, or he's laying down the law, or he's saying, well, look, the only way this can be done. Did you any like anecdotes that you have from that sort of thing?
A couple of occasions where Mark was. He showed me that the best way of dealing with people when you're recording is if you don't think something's good enough to be the finished take, is to get them to listen to it and kind of get them to say themselves that it's not good enough, rather than telling them that it's not good enough. It's better to make them decide that they want to do it again, rather than telling them that it's not good enough, it needs doing again. I think it makes people feel more comfortable if it's their decision rather than being told, and they won't get as frustrated.
Yeah, yeah. So you'd say, like, well, possibly you draw from that personally yourself when you think, well, if I ever get in those sort of conversations, I like that technique, or think that's a good.
I have used that since, especially yesterday when I was recording the vocals for that EP. I did use that with the singer.
Yeah,
when he was slightly out of key and he didn't hear it, so we brought him into like the main room to hear it properly, and got him to sort of say that
say I'll have another go at that. Like, yeah.
And I think Mark was right. It does make people more comfortable with it, and it's not like they're being told that they're wrong all the time, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of, I guess, almost pushing people to push themselves to be better, rather than trying to tell them that they need to be.
Yeah, yeah. Did you have any issues of your standards versus their standards, like where you could sort of go, God, I wouldn't run this studio like that, or I wouldn't do that particular thing. I think I'd do it better, or here's how I would be a different type of engineer to Mark if I was, did you? Anything that you thought?
Not as such. I mean, there probably was a few things that I'd probably do differently, but it doesn't necessarily mean that either's right or wrong. It's just different approaches. I can't think of any offhand.
Yeah.
It's a very relaxed environment, which is what I'd hope to achieve as well. It puts people at ease, which helps with the recording. So.
Yeah. Do you think what do you think? What do you think it's done? Do you feel like it's done much for your personal improvements or your professional sort of skills? Do you think it's improved both areas or any at all? Or
I think it's improved both. Like, it taught me a few mixing techniques, like with parallel compression and things like that, that I've used quite a bit of since then.
Yeah.
I had kind of heard of them, but he taught me how to do it properly. And with different miking techniques and using stereo pairs and things that I wouldn't have ever considered to do.
So it's possibly a lot more professional sort of skill development than maybe, say, personal sort of...
Well, I think the personal skill has improved as well with the whole, like I was talking about before, getting people in, trying to show them that it needs doing again rather than telling people over and over. So I think it has improved both areas.
Yeah. Well, it'd be good if you can focus on some of that. You can obviously put that into your conclusions, can't you? Sort of argue those points and say, like, these are the conclusions I've come from. This is what this has done for me. If you had to sort of put it into one area, what would you say was the most interesting part of it all then? If you could sort of, I know you could say, well, it was all great, but what kind of, was the main thing you think, oh, this is really hitting the nail on the head for me. I love this side of, this is what I wanted to get out of this.
I guess the most interesting part for me was probably when we were actually doing the recording, and when Mark would be sat with me and explaining different techniques to me and explaining what he would do with it after and different mixing ideas and things like that, like learning things that I'd never heard of.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of information to take in, but I've gone away and I've researched into things, and it has taught me quite a lot.
Yeah.
In quite a short space of time. So.
Were you feverishly writing notes or trying to remember it all then? Or?
I was too busy to be taking notes because I was doing all the tracking.
Yeah.
I wasn't. That's another good thing I think about the way Binary Cell do, like the work placement, is you actually get in and you're doing the work. You're not observing or making tea or anything. You're actually sat there doing it.
Yeah.
And obviously Mark was there all the time making sure I wasn't doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
But it was good to have like the actual hands-on experience in a professional studio as opposed to just doing it here or. Yeah.
It's a different sort of side then, isn't it? Completely. Okay. There's one other thing about I don't know. I'll turn this off anyway. I won't put